Hey, Wellness Warriors, Dr. Zarowski, and we're going to talk a little bit about how your gut is connected to your brain, and if one's not working, the other will struggle. Okay, so if you're somebody who has a gut problem, you could develop a psychiatric type of condition, right? You can have a lot of mood issues, a lot of anxiety, depression, all these issues, all just because your gut is not functioning well. So this is the type of topic we're going to break down, help you understand it better, and of course help you understand what to do next. So before we get started, I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski, and welcome to the channel. Be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and for all my natural health videos, go to www.drz.tv. You can go over there, subscribe, become a member, and it helps us and supports us in making videos that are going to change your life, just like this one right here. So I'm going to be reviewing an article today that is over at newvisionhealthcenter.com. And what you'll find is that we tend to believe that our brain's disconnected from all these areas of our body, and our gut's just a gut problem if we're struggling with it, and our thyroid's only a thyroid problem. Well, the reality is our bodies are very much connected, and when you have an issue in one area, it directly impacts other areas. So the article basically starts off by talking about the gut-brain axis, and I want to go through and help you understand what that is and how your gut and brain are actually connected. The gut-brain axis refers to a physical and chemical connection between your gut and brain. Millions of nerves and neurons run between your gut and brain. Neurotransmitters and other chemicals produced in your gut also affect your brain. And so this is really important because we oftentimes think of our gut as this thing that digests something, digests our food, and it's just maybe powered by the brain. But the reality is there is very, very complex neurology within our gut that is just as complex as the neurology within our brain. So it's pretty crazy. The gut-brain axis is essentially a two-way communication and connection between your gut and the brain. What's happening in the gut can directly influence our brain and also our behavior. Okay, that's a key thing here, is our behavior. So there's so many people out there who are going on things like antidepressants. Okay, it's awful. They're not even addressing the real problems. They're just trying to cover them up. And then, people become a shell of a human simply because they're taking drugs that are literally just masking their feelings, which is unbelievably bad. Because I'll tell you too, if you're somebody who's ever either been on these before or witnessed somebody on them, they're very difficult to come off of in a way that doesn't dramatically impact your life. A lot of people can hardly hold down a job while they're coming off of these things because it impacts their memory and everything so much. An imbalance within the microbiome, the article goes on to say, which, if you don't know what your microbiome is, it's a collection of microbes and bacteria and fungi and viruses that naturally live on our body and inside of us. But they're all kept at bay. They're under control. They're not bad, where you would say like a bacterial infection or a viral infection. It's like everything is well maintained in its little ecosystem, and that's your microbiome. So the inflammation is also linked. The inflammation in our gut is linked to causing severe mental illnesses, including anxiety and depression, which we mentioned, which are very common in today's society. Now, how in the world does your gut communicate with your brain? Well, it's going to do it in three ways. I'm just going to sum it up. Basically, it'll have a nerve connection through things like your vagus nerve, which is a very, very powerful parasympathetic pathway. Your neuroendocrine system in the way of like production of hormones and stress response and metabolism and that kind of thing. And then also your immune system. And this is because your gut literally makes up like 70% of your immune system, and these microbes and bacteria and everything are all part of your immune system and keeping you healthy. And so we have to make sure that that's all under control. Now, how does your gut health affect your mental health? And this is where it gets very, very interesting, because almost anybody who's struggling with like any of these issues we've mentioned, like mental health problems, almost always they have a gut issue. And like a lot of times you may not even notice you have a gut issue, but like there's a gut issue. Like, do you have parasites? Do you have like bacterial imbalances? Do you have candida overgrowth? Like, what do you have going on in there? There's something wrong, right? Because it's not normal to be depressed, right? for the most part, many people live in very, very good circumstances compared to, a couple hundred years ago, right? But yet people are walking around depressed and poor mood, and it's just not great. So if someone is suffering from a gastrointestinal problem, the article says, and they also have symptoms, and they're finding that they have different problems with focus and memory and cognitive issues, then the gut-brain axis is affected. And when the gut-brain axis is affected, it can not only cause psychiatric disorders and psychological disorders, it also can affect your mood. It can affect your memory. It can affect the amount of brain energy you have on a daily basis. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the different symptoms that would indicate you have this issue going on. Okay, now I can speak from like a personal basis. I had SIBO, which you've probably heard my story on that. I've told it many times because I work with a lot of people with gut issues. It's the #1 reason that people seek me out for care around the world. And, when I was dealing with these gut issues, SIBO myself, it started off with like, I would just have awful brain fog. I'd have poor brain energy. I couldn't focus. My memory was useless. And by the way, when all of this was happening, I was literally in school, like taking boards, trying to become a doctor and struggling. And because I was working so hard, I was studying so hard and not like actually able to retain things and get my brain to work, it was emotionally devastating to me, because it's like when you look around and you're the hardest one, like the hardest worker around, and then you show up and you can't even perform. It's awful. It's really awful. And so that's what I had went through. So here's a couple things to look for. Discomfort after a meal. So if every time you eat a meal and you get a lot of pain and discomfort, there's a good chance that your gut health is affected. And this a lot of times is related to like a gastritis. Okay, this is like where you have just inflammation of the stomach, inflammation of the gut. It's bad news. Okay, distension after meals. So let's say you're a skinny person, but you're just bloated all the time. Okay, this is a high potential at this point that if you're constantly having these issues, that you have some sort of issue with like a bacterial imbalance or a bacterial infection within your gut. Food intolerances. So let's say that you're like somebody who reacts to every food that you eat anymore and like, constantly reactive. Well, this is a very good chance that you have like some sort of autoimmune issue that's taking place. And so this is something that we also want to take into consideration, okay? And if you're having a bunch of these issues, honestly, you should, I'll put a link in the description below where you could call up my clinic and you could look at working with us on it, because these things are complicated. It's one of the things that's so interesting is that a lot of people are looking for the quick fix for all of this stuff. And the problem with a lot of these gut issues is not just like one thing. It's just not one simple thing. If you do this one thing, it's going to fix it. It's not that. It's like you're looking at inflammatory issues layered with bacterial imbalances, layered with possible like parasites and candida issues, layered with leaky gut, layered with autoimmune issues. I mean, like it's just layer upon layer. And so like there's so many people who have these issues and they're like, oh, I'll just follow a FODMAP diet. It's like, okay, good luck with that. Maybe in 50 years you'll solve this issue and it'll be by pure luck. But in many cases, like, it's not even diet that you have to lean in towards most. You have to really like cleanse out the gut and like go through this whole process, but it all comes down to like what specifically you're struggling with. Now, looking at problems like stress, anxiety, Parkinson's, bipolar disorder, memory issues, focus issues, schizophrenia, autism, all these different disorders are being linked to gut conditions, whether it's a deficiency in a certain strain of bacteria, increase of inflammation, or there's pathogens and parasites in the gut. When we go in and start actually removing some of these issues, then we're going to find that many of our problems stop. Some of the top strategies to heal your gut, okay? So probiotics, they work really well. It's important to make sure that you're taking a good probiotic. I always recommend one called Probiotic Strength, okay? I'll put resources in the description because I'm going to probably just off the cuff mention a lot of stuff through here. L-glutamine is something that's good, and L-glutamine works really well because it plays a huge role in helping reduce inflammation within the gut and help like basically heal wounds and tighten up those gap junctions if you're somebody who's dealing with leaky gut. So I'm a big fan of that. Honestly, if you have any digestive issues, like this is something you probably want to look towards, but I don't use just like a straight heavy L-glutamine, and the reason for that is because I find that like when it's mixed with different items and it's able to work synergistically with like aloe and some different nutrients, then what we find is that it tends to work a little bit better, because that's what sometimes just pouring one particular like nutrient on in high amounts isn't necessarily your answer. In this case, an amino acid, but like pouring that one thing on at really, really heavy doses isn't necessarily always going to be the route you want to go. Now, omega-3 fatty acids, this is something that's good. It's important for your brain health. It's going to help with your mood. I'm a big fan of this. It helps lower inflammation. Digestive enzymes are also a really important factor here, okay? And I'm just giving you a couple tips based off this article and talking through them. Sometimes it can be far more complicated. In most cases, it is far more complicated than this. But if you're someone who's like, look, I don't want to, work one-on-one with your team, and I don't want to, do anything but work on solving this issue myself, this is like a really solid place to start. Okay. Digestive enzymes is good too. And the reason for this is because not only does it help like reduce some of the bloating, help you break down your food better, but also if you're dealing with like the autoimmune component of a gut issue, then it helps like break down some of that food so that it's not constantly getting into your bloodstream and causing a whole bunch of issues with like autoimmune reactions. So here's some additional tips. It goes on to say for optimizing gut and brain health, eat lots of fiber, drink lots of water, exercise regularly, and include anti-inflammatory foods. Okay, some anti-inflammatory foods are going to be things like walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, salmon. Berries are good, and also green tea. And so this is, and then the article goes on to say like, you should probably, if you're dealing with a lot of these issues, they're complex, you should probably work with a holistic practitioner. And so and that's the truth of it. Like I said, a lot of people are looking for that one thing that they can quickly take and it's just going to make all their problems go away. But the reality is, and I say this just because it's like there's people who literally struggle with these issues for years until they get so bad that they are stuck trying to find somebody to pull them out of a devastating place. And that's not where you want to be. Like, take action on this stuff now, because like I said, these issues spiral all the way into eventually when somebody's got an autoimmune crisis. And if you look around today, it's not hard to find somebody with an autoimmune disorder, whether it's one that's attacking their thyroid, one that's giving them rashes, one that's attacking their joints, causing just chronic inflammation that causes severe pain. There's so many autoimmune issues that people are facing. And that's what's scary as hell about these different gut conditions, is that they do spiral off into a severe problem typically at some point. Like, I've helped people rehab back from colon cancer. I've helped people who have, like severe parasitic issues and ulcers and all kinds of stuff. So I've dealt with a lot of the really, really bad stuff. And so anything you can do to obviously avoid being down that path where you're like, in devastation mode trying to overcome this stuff is going to be good. So take action today. Like, when you have a problem in your body, it doesn't magically go away. And I know I'm mostly speaking to the guys out there, because, when I look at like who seeks me out for care, it's like way towards the high percentage of women who are looking for care, simply because most guys are ignoring it until it's like a disaster, right? So we want to make sure that we're like taking action on this stuff right now, so that we're not dealing with disaster zone down the road that in many cases leads to a bad place. Like, here's the thing, is that many of these issues that you will face later on in life that will be devastating in nature will be things that you have dealt with for years, and you've dealt with it for years, except the difference is you didn't take action on it. So maybe one day you find out that you have gastrointestinal cancer, and you're going to be able to go, yeah, I had gut problems for like 5-10 years. I know I've had them. I've reacted to everything. I diarrhea all the time, IBS all the time. That these things are happening in your body. So take action on them, so that you're not the person who is stuck in a very, very hard, challenging, emotional situation when you go to your doctor and they say, hey, we got to basically rip out 3 feet of your colon, right? Like, you don't want to be in that. Or, hey, we're going to take your colon out and then we're going to give you the, ostomy bag on your side. And that's also a devastating place to be. So we don't want to go down that road, okay? We know that colon issues and colon cancer and all these things are wildly on the rise. And we also now know that it affects your brain. So if you're somebody who is dealing with any of these different mental disorders, understand that your gut is very important for producing neurotransmitters like serotonin that help you sleep at night, that help you give you a sense of well-being and quality of life. Like, you have to understand that the thoughts and the way that you feel every day has a lot to do with the chemicals that are in your brain, right? These neurotransmitters, for instance. And when they're off, they can make you do all kinds of crazy things, and they change the perception of your entire world around you. So things like serotonin, like I said, that makes you feel good and happy and sleep well, right? I mean, if you're down in the dumps and depressed, like, we got a dopamine and serotonin problem in the brain. We need to fix them. We need to balance them out. But we don't just do that by going and getting some goofball antidepressant drug that's eventually going to, cause you even more issues and potentially even lead to suicide, right? It says right on them, leads to suicidal thoughts. I mean, I know somebody who tried killing themselves after going on that. Those things are awful, right? So if we actually address the problem in your life and the actual health issues that are driving these issues, driving brain inflammation, which essentially is driving psychological disorders, psychiatric conditions, then from there we can actually get you well and give you a good quality of life back. So anyway, resources in the description below. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you like this one, check out this one right over here.